Good day, everyone. Antimicrobial resistance. It's a scary thing. Did you know it wasn't until the 1940s when we actually had antibiotics available for treatment? Unfortunately, for 1.25 million people every year, they're living like they don't have antibiotics available. They have deaths directly attributed to antimicrobial resistance. So as I said, it's a pretty scary thing. Having said that, I don't want to be the presenter of doom or gloom. So when it comes to the Australian industry and our stewardship around antimicrobials, we are doing a real top-notch job. We have the lowest mortality rate due to antimicrobial resistance in people in the world. So good job by us. The project I want to present here today is actually a project I did in California during a veterinary residency on, unsurprisingly, antimicrobial resistance and, unsurprisingly, dairy cows. We specifically looked at Ceftiofur, and Ceftiofur's trade names of Accent, XNL, Exceed, Ceftomax, and the like. And the reason why we were interested in that is because the World Health Organization has designated it an antibiotic of highest priority critical importance. And it gets a lofty title like that because of its similarity to some last-line antibiotics used in human medicine. So, pretty important drug. What we did for our project was we had 2 farms enrolled. We had one 900 Holstein cow herd, and we had one 3,000 lactating Jersey cows. They're a lot smaller. We got some cows from close-up and took fecal samples every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday until they were 60 days in milk. And basically, we took those to the lab and counted how much bacteria was resistant or sensitive to Ceftiofur. We didn't do anything to the cows themselves. They were just living within the dairies themselves and under farm protocols. Unfortunately for our study, our Holstein herd only treated one of our enrolled cows, so good for the background but not too interesting for us. Our Jersey herds, on the other hand, they treated half of their cows with antibiotics, systemic antibiotics. And all but one was treated with Ceftiofur. So this is where I need to take a little step back and probably talk about the difference between the Australian and the US attitude towards Ceftiofur currently. They love the stuff over there. It's the #1 treatment for respiratory disease. It's up there for lameness, metritis obviously, and they've even got intramammary formulation, so this dry cow, lactating cow for Ceftiofur. So with that sort of as a background image, it wasn't too surprising that when we treated the cow, we got a massive increase in resistance. What was a little bit more surprising was how rapidly that resistant population disappeared. By 7 days, you wouldn't know that cow got treated with an antibiotic, let alone Ceftiofur. And this sort of result has been replicated in other studies where they've experimentally injected the cows with Ceftiofur formulations, where they've looked at different antibiotics, so different bacteria. They've looked at, say, the bacteria in the uterus itself. It's a fairly consistent picture. If you treat a cow with Ceftiofur, you're almost guaranteed to increase some resistant bacteria output. But it is just a really transient increase. By 7 days, you won't be able to tell the difference between a treated and untreated cow. So what does that mean for us using Ceftiofur here? I've got 3 broad recommendations, and hopefully none of this will be groundbreaking for anyone in the crowd today. Number 1, if your first-line antibiotics, so your penicillins, your oxytetracyclines, are doing the job and doing it well, great. You're on a winner. Continue doing that. 2, if your first-line antibiotic is failing a particular cow, I wouldn't hesitate to put her onto Ceftiofur. Generally speaking, it's a little bit more broad spectrum, and it can get into the lung tissue and the uterine tissue a little bit better than the first-line antibiotics. She will almost certainly put out some resistant bacteria into the environment, but it will be transient, and the decision to put her on Ceftiofur could be a life-changing decision for her. And 3, if you find yourself reaching for that Ceftiofur bottle more and more often, that's probably an opportunity for you to step back and think, why am I having to treat these cows? Do you consult your nutritionalist, your veterinarian? Is your transition diet right? Is there a vaccine available for this particular disease? Try to stop the infections taking place before the treatment's required. So in summary, when it comes to Ceftiofur treatment, and I think so long as we use it with judicious care, which as an industry we are certainly doing at the moment, I think it's a wonderful treatment option that's available for us, and it helps us look after and be custodians of our cuddly cows.
Question for David?
We don't. We have the opposite of a label claim. There's a directly, you can't use it for mastitis. So these, in the US, there's special formula, intramammary tubes that are specially formulated There are also differences on the label claims depending if you're in Europe, Australia, the US. So in Australia, it's specifically for respiratory disease, but we are allowed to do extra label treatment. So we are, if we're justified, we can do it for metritis or diarrhea, for instance, salmonella. In the US, their label claim is respiratory disease, metritis, and foot rot. Yeah, so we can still use it. You can still be in a justifiable position to use it for those other diseases as an extra label treatment, but you'll still prefer to go to your first line antibiotics if you can. And I think, generally speaking, as an industry, that's what the message has been. It's been fairly strongly that as a message, and we've been following through. Look, so specifically for Ceftiofur, it's really hard to find resistance in the adult lactating cows. Calves are a little hotbed of resistance for a number of reasons. Giving them waste milk, so they're basically drinking antibiotics. That's a completely different picture. On the human medicine side as well, we're doing a great job. As I said, Australasia in general has the lowest mortality rates for that.
You were saying like, stick to your first line antibiotics and if
Yep.
they're not to get. So we haven't really picked up that there's too much resistance on those.
So it depends on where you're checking the. If you're looking fecal samples and you're looking close to treatment, you will get resistance, almost guaranteed in every single case. But if you're doing, say, a survey of just grab the random cow, she's mid-lactation, she hasn't had a treatment, you're going to be hard-pressed to find it in the bacteria you grow. If you search specifically for the genes, those genes exist in nature, in cows. If you look for it with that really, really sensitive technology, so the PCRs, you can go down the river and you'll find resistant genes. So there's a concept of the resistome where you're looking at all the resistant genes in the entire microbiome, or you're looking at our pathogens. And when it comes to our pathogens, the bugs that are causing problems to the cows, it's hard to find. With the caveat of calves. Calves can be troublesome.
Perfect. Join me. Thank you, David.